Welcome to AI in Action. My name is Maury, and I'm here with my husband Jim. It is Sunday evening, and we are doing what we do every Sunday evening. We are talking about artificial intelligence. Actually, not every Sunday evening because we did not do a podcast last Sunday. We were in Galveston at a TCEA conference, and we will talk about that in just a few minutes. So, happy Father's Day, Jim.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We had one kid that was here this morning to have breakfast with you, which was awesome. He actually is leaving for field training at 5 o'clock in the morning, so he's already left for the day. He's headed into the Air Force field training for a little while. My mama heart is a little bit worried.
Yes.
And we have our oldest one that had to work, and then our daughter is actually on a delayed honeymoon. She had to wait for just a few months after she got married, so
But they all called me.
it was kind of weird but cool.
It was cool because she called me using WhatsApp from the Mediterranean,
Yeah, that was kind
and
of
that was
cool.
kind of cool.
And they're sending pictures and stuff. So it's really awesome what technology can do for you.
Yeah, a lot of people use WhatsApp when they travel because it's encrypted, so it's end-to-end encrypted. You can make phone calls, you can do messaging, you can send pictures. It's a full messaging app with phone call capability, but it's end-to-end encrypted, which when you're traveling in foreign countries is a nice security measure.
Yes, it is. So it was a good Father's Day for you. And now we're wrapping it up this Sunday evening talking about artificial intelligence, which should make it a awesome Father's Day for you because that's one of the things that you really, really love
It is my
doing.
favorite topic.
So I am ready for you to do a core dump and tell me and our listeners all the great things that are happening with artificial intelligence. But let's start out by just kind of talking about what we've been doing. I am very happy to say that AI Education Professionals is now a member of the Austin AI Alliance. It is a group of people that get together once a month there in Austin. You need to look it up on the internet and think about joining if you're a small business or a large business. We actually have IBM and several larger companies that have become members of the Austin AI Alliance. It's really neat to get together with other people that love artificial intelligence as much as we do and really think it's going to be positive for our world that we live in.
I actually saw them at another AI conference that I had gone to in Austin several months ago, and I told you guys about it. And
Mm-hmm.
apparently, you were listening because you went and joined.
I listen occasionally. So now the TCEA conference was in Galveston. It was actually the elementary school teachers conference. They do it every single year. I've been several times. I know you've been at least once before.
I have.
It's really fun because there is nothing more enthusiastic than a K through 5 teacher. It's amazing to me how excited they can get about the smallest things. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of upbeat people.
I don't go very often, but I can say that I agree with you. Elementary teachers are, they just tend to be excited
Yeah.
about what they do and why they're doing it. And they're very attentive.
Yes.
They listen, they ask good questions, they do lots of, it's just a lot of fun. I go to, because I want to meet with vendors, which this year the vendor
It
count
was it
was,
was a little
it was a
low.
little light. So I didn't get to meet with as many as I hoped. I did go to a couple sessions, which you did as well, that are unrelated to AI, which because
Yes.
you're the instructional technology
I
person.
do like to continue to give teachers things that they can look at in their classroom. That's something I've always been very passionate. I mean, I was a tech coach for years and years on all the different campuses I've been on, and I went to like a Fig Jam conference, a Canva session. I say conference, a session. I went to these different sessions to find out the latest, greatest, and a lot of them are, of course, putting artificial intelligence into their products. So that's something that I'll get to kind of spread the word about that. Now, we did two sessions while we were there. And the first one we did was just a real basic AI session, just come learn the basics. And it was a large room. It was fairly full. Um, and what did we learn from that session? I was going to ask you. I'm actually going to kind of interview you just a little bit. What did we learn from that very first session?
I learned that not everyone's happy with AI.
Well, we knew that, but this lady had a very specific concern that I think that you addressed really well. What was her concern?
Her concern had to do with the legitimacy of the generated answer,
Correct.
basically. Is this, how do you know that what it's generating is not completely false? Well, a lot of people ask that. I mean, they have a term for it, hallucinations, because we know that AI will answer the question. Even if you don't give it enough context, it's just going to make up something.
We actually played a game with them in both of our sessions, and the game was basically a really general analogy. And it's one of the things that I think it was, what did we say? A kitten is to cat as puppy is to, and everyone knew the answer. Everyone knew puppy is to
Because you
dog
gave them enough
because we
context.
gave them enough context. Well, then we put up there monkey is to, and we left it blank. And then we put up two more blanks. And so we were really trying to to drive home the fact that generative AI has to have context.
That's what the prompting is all about. You give it that context can be the your because we have an acronym we use, but context can be you're a certain type of user, you're an assistant, you're a expert in this, that, or the other. But it's also the more context you can give it, which is relevant to a conversation we're going to have later in this podcast. That context is important, and her concerns are legitimate, which is why I addressed them as legitimate. I didn't realize until it was pointed out to me that she was actually a little hostile. But what I was trying to say was, is that all the information you get, if you type in something on the web, you do a Google search, you have no idea that information can be made up.
You also
That's
said
part of digital literacy,
well, you
right?
also said you just met me. If I tell you something to be true, are you going to 100% believe me? Are you going to go out and verify that what I'm saying is true? And my point to her was that the rules haven't changed. I mean, artificial intelligence being there is not changing the rules. You're still not going to take things at face value. You are going to check your sources. You are going to make sure what they're saying is legitimate.
Sounds like digital literacy.
It really does sound a lot like digital literacy. What a great idea. Maybe we should teach that in our educational system. So that was our first session. And then our second session was the next day, and it was 8 o'clock in the morning. So I assumed that no one would show up, and it was a packed house. I was pleasantly surprised. We do this every single time we go out and do any trainings. I say, oh, there's going to be 30, 40 people. And you're like, four people are going to show up. You always say that.
I
Four
know I'm
people are going
always
to show up.
off on the number of people I'm guessing are going to show up.
Yes, you are.
Every time I'm off.
You're off, which is great. It was a full house, and a lot of the people who came to the previous session the previous day showed up the next day for this one. I was surprised though because the title of this session was basically beyond the basics, how we were taking a deeper dive into artificial intelligence. So I assumed that the people who walked in would know the basics. So I asked, how many of you guys are currently using artificial intelligence that you know of? Because we're using artificial intelligence whether we know it or not, and we have been for years. But there was only three out of a packed house. Only three of them raised their hands, which really surprised me. So, what did I learn from the teachers? A few things. They're still hesitant to use it because they still don't know a lot about how it's going to be utilized. And one of the things that I talked about to them is that, you hear things like lesson planning and engaging activities and, transform, disrupt, revolutionize. You hear all these buzzwords with AI 1.0, which is what you call it, but they've been teachers for a long time. They don't necessarily need help with lesson planning. So I thought the sessions were great because we actually dove into very specific things that AI can help with in a K through 5 classroom that doesn't have anything to do with what you're currently doing.
One of the things that's difficult for me when we talk about AI is I always think that everybody knows enough that I can skip the basics and go on to the applications. How do you use this tool? And we've proven multiple times now that that's not true, that
Not
people
the
don't
case.
know enough about it. You have to do the basics. So we definitely want to do the basics each time, but I was surprised that there was still people that were fearful. I mean, the second day, the same person came back and she was asking me, it was more about a privacy thing where Microsoft got in trouble for privacy. So I think the summarize the particular negativity that I saw, it had to be with fearful. I'm fearful that it's going to give wrong answers. I'm fearful that but I think it's more like I'm fearful that it's going to take away people's creativity, that the students aren't going to want to learn anymore. And you wrote a good article about
I
that
did.
recently.
I just wrote an article that you helped me with. It was actually your idea. You're the one that gave me the idea at 6 o'clock in the morning, sitting in the chair in the bedroom, talking about AI. That is my life. Anyway,
It wasn't 6, it was 5:30.
oh, sorry. It was about how AI has not killed creativity, humans have. And basically, it is about the entertainment at our fingertips that we have been struggling with for a long time. So if you get an opportunity, it is posted on my LinkedIn, it is posted on your Medium. It's called like AI didn't kill creativity, we did, and it's basically my opinion about how it's a road we've been going down for a long time, and it's not exacerbated by artificial intelligence. If anything, AI has the potential to bring it back because there are so many people out there that want to do more, but just don't know how to do it. I know that I have been doing so much more with my writing, with my idea generation, with my pictures that I've been coming up with just my graphic stuff. And it's because I'm able to have a conversation with artificial intelligence about what it is I'm trying to get out of my brain. And sometimes it helps me kind of, you know, get it out there. So,
Brainstorming is one of the key things we both use it for, I think.
yes. So let's move on. Apple.
Well, there's a lot of different announcements. The reason I mentioned earlier about, I always mention 1.0, 2.0. The 1.0 is the chatbots.
Yes.
We see lots and lots of chatbots. They're bolt-ons. The next logical step is to start integrating it into, which is what I call AI 2.0, which is a lot harder. You integrate it into things that you use every day. Remember, the information that's out there and the tools we use, they were created long before we were using artificial intelligence, large language models. So you still have to interact with them. Well, the first place that you interact, whether you realize it or not, is the operating system. There's an operating system running on your phone. There's one on your Mac. There's one on your Windows, Chrome OS, whatever. When you start integrating the functionality into it to where now you have a natural language interface to all the things you're used to having to type in. The graphical user interface was created to give you a simpler way of managing all that cool hardware that's built into a PC. Well, now you have the ability to talk to it in a sense and so Apple announced what they call Apple Intelligence. First, Microsoft did it at their developer conference. The Microsoft one, they got a lot of flack for it, which is one of the things that lady brought up to me. They got a lot of flack for it because they have a record feature, context. If you're designing a system with AI in it, large language models, you have to give it context. The more it knows about you and your habits and what you do, the better it can assist you, which is typical for any assistant, right? Well, they built a record feature in, records everything.
I really think that things record even when you don't know they're recording.
Well, how else do you think that when you look on your Google Maps and it shows a red up ahead of you, how do you
Yes,
think it knows
it
that?
knows that the traffic. Yeah, it's not that people are saying, "Oh, there's a traffic jam." It's
No,
because
it
it's noticing
knows
that
all the
all of the GPS
phones.
stuff has slowed down. Like
Yes.
the phones are not
So
moving at the rate they were moving at.
I'm not belittling the concerns people have about privacy. I just think it became a thing to allow people to shout it really loud and they got clicks and stuff like that. They got Microsoft should not turn it on by default. So now they're not. So I agree with that. Apple is trying a different approach. Apple's always claimed they have a better privacy approach than others. And maybe they do. I'm not a complete privacy expert on everything. But Apple is saying AI is not a product, it's a feature. So we're going to add that feature in, but we're going to have a powerful enough processor, which they do because I have a MacBook with one of their older processors. So we can run some of these language models locally. So when you interact with it, like you say, create a new file or start an email, you don't need an AI with the capabilities of ChatGPT 4 in order to write an email
Correct.
or to open a file or search a file or that natural language interaction with your operating system. So
Tell me, yeah,
they're
tell
going to,
me an email. Tell
yeah,
me a summary of an email.
or how many folder, how many files do I have with this name, or is this in any of my files? it's
Oh,
it's like a
as a
it's like a super
teacher,
search.
how many students haven't turned in assignment 3?
Yeah, it's like a super search. And so Apple is saying we're going to do all that locally because especially with their M4, I've got one of their M2s and it actually does a pretty decent job of what's called local inferencing. So when you move to M4, they've got M3 out already. M4, it's supposed to get even better. So what Apple's saying is, for the stuff we can, we're going to do it locally. Everything's going to stay local. For the things that we can't, we've got a partnership with OpenAI, so we're going to use these larger models like GPT-4, but we're going to tell you I can't answer this locally. We're going to use it more. So you have the option of saying no, thank you, I don't want you to do that, or going ahead and doing it. I think that's a good model. I think it makes a lot of sense to do it that way. I don't think Microsoft has any intention of doing it that way. They're really focused on enterprise. Google is putting it in Chrome OS, but Google's had a lot of stumbles, so I don't know how well they're going to do it. But I think Apple's got a good approach. Now there are people like Elon Musk said, "Hey, we're not going to let any Apple products. It's too creepy, yada yada yada." I think that was just an attention grab. I really think that if you're going to use AI, this seems like a good idea if you want it to work well in your day-to-day life.
Well, I agree. And Apple has always, I know that we always have a conversation with our son in law and his Android versus our Apple. And I'm sorry, but Apple has done a really good job of just integrating everything into, like your iPhone. I, I am looking forward to having Super Siri. I mean, I sit in my car and I say, hey Siri, and tell me this and tell me that, and sorry, I can't do that while you're driving, or it just according to the web, this is that. And
Well, what
just
your big
having that interactive conversation
one of the
is going
things
to
you
be
really want
great.
is, hey Siri, is there a storm up ahead on my path?
I would love that. I mean, I'm
So it would
constantly,
tell you that.
there is nothing scarier than driving in like West Texas and all of a sudden all the emergency alarm stuff goes off because there's a tornado warning in
Yeah,
your
there's
area.
and what you
Yeah.
guys usually do is if I'm not with you, you
Uh,
and Jared were traveling, you called
we
me,
call you and
I
say,
get
look
up
up
on
the
the map and
radar.
I
Is
look it
it,
up.
are we headed into it? Are we headed
Yes.
away from it?
So anyway, I think Apple has a pretty good story. Now, Google's going to integrate it into Chrome OS, which is good as well because we have a lot of Chromebooks. But that's all going to be cloud based. There's no local processing power on.
So what is this actually saying to all you guys listening? AI is not going away. The
Everyone's integrating it into the operating
the
system.
big guys are integrating it into the operating system. So it is there, it's here to stay. So now let's talk about privacy. There was a headline that you mentioned to me not very like earlier today from a company I had not heard the name in a long time called DuckDuckGo.
I have no idea where they came up with that name,
It's a great name,
but
but
it's a search. It's actually a search tool,
mhm.
and it's always been privacy focused. DuckDuckGo from day one, I use it some because it supposedly doesn't store any information about your searches and yada yada yada. The idea is I don't use it much because Google's really good and it's you know. But what is that old saying? If the product is free, then you're the product.
Exactly.
And
They're getting
so
information from
Google
you.
and all them are getting information. I don't know how DuckDuckGo makes information or gets information or gets money mostly. But the thing that I like about it is they're calling it a privacy oriented chatbot. So again, it's an AI 1.0 kind of thing. Maybe they're going to integrate it in better.
Well, I will tell you how they're going to make money. They're going to make money because there's going to be a free version that is going to allow you X number of searches. And then if you want to have additional searches, you're going to have the premium version, which is what everyone is
Well,
doing.
and
And that's what it says right there. It says that currently it's free, but with a daily limit.
we talk about this all the time. Welcome to the 1980s. When it comes in the 80s, everything, if you wanted a piece of information, you paid for it. You
Mhm.
bought a newspaper, you rented a movie, which
Or
is a
you
physical
listen to
thing, or you
commercials.
listened to commercials. There was one way or the other. This, unfortunately, in a world that's full of information like it is now, you're used to getting it for free. This idea that I'm going to have to narrow my information sources down because I have to pay for all of them is a very painful exercise. It's painful for me.
Oh, you complain
I
about it all the time.
I've
This is
gotten used
behind a
to it.
paywall. This is behind a paywall.
All my news feed now, every time I do a news feed, it comes up behind a paywall. AI is not going to make that better. It's, if anything, it may make it worse because you really want to. Different AIs have different capabilities. Like I now have a subscription to Claude, and I have a subscription to ChatGPT. I'd like to have one to Perplexity as well, but it's another $20 a month. I can't keep adding all these subscriptions, but they all have different features that I like. So anyway, I think the DuckDuckGo thing is a good idea. Is
I
my
think it
point.
is too. And for those people who are
I
wanting
just
to,
don't know if I could
now
ever
let me
afford.
move this little computer over here real quick because we are also going to talk a little bit about this person that you brought him to my attention. He actually, um,
I brought him to your attention because I knew you'd recognize the
the
products.
products, and he is actually, he works for a,
He's now the CEO,
yeah, for Age of Learning. And Age of Learning is something that I've known about for a long time. They have a product like ABC Mouse. They have
which we use at the
Frog
school.
Street. They have a great pre-K curriculum. And this guy, he was at NASA for a while, and he's got a really good
He's got a
resume.
long resume in machine learning, which is a
Specifically,
subset of artificial intelligence.
yes,
And so he has a lot of credibility because he is now the CEO of the company, but he's not just a marketing guy or he's not just a business person. He's got some serious credentials when it comes to utilization
hmm
of machine learning, which, as I said, AI is a superset of machine learning. So hopefully he's going to be applying that knowledge to these tools. We had some hiccups when we first started using those tools, integrating them. I know you had to help with a lot of that integration because, but our
yes, I did.
apparently our kindergarten teachers, they either require to use it or they just like it
It,
because
it
if
is
it stops
a
working, they
it is a
ask.
pre-K curriculum that they have been using for a while. So the points that this guy had made in an article that he just wrote was basically that artificial intelligence is going to be instrumental in a bunch of different fields. I mean, medical, research. I mean, there's all these different fields that AI is going to be instrumental in, but he really thinks it's also going to be instrumental in education. And what he points out is the personalized learning ability for students, like to
Same
where
as Saul Khan mentioned.
same as Saul Khan from Khan Academy with his one-on-one tutoring that he's been talking about. And to me, something that I'm afraid that teachers are fearful of is that it's going to be more work for them. And one of the things I want to point out before we run out of time is that it's not going to be more work, it's going to end up being easier on you. And that's because when I was in junior high and I taught and I had like 120 kids a day that I saw, I would always look at their test grades. I would look at what they didn't get right or what everyone in the class missed this one question. Oh no, I need to go back and reteach that. So you're always looking at that data as a teacher, but now you're going to have artificial intelligence be able to look at that data and then say, hey, all 120 kids missed this one question. Here is a way to reteach this, or 10 of the kids missed this question. Here is an idea on how you can, just help them, build some building blocks under them to help them know that concept. So it's
Well,
going to
that's
be
one
like
aspect of it.
it's a teaching assistant. It's going to become a teaching assistant.
But the tutoring spot, that's what we both got excited about. When Saul Khan had mentioned it, he still hasn't implemented it, which he's getting, as you said once before, he's getting some flack about
A little
that.
bit of flack.
This guy mentioned it as well. I keep calling him this guy. I can't remember what his name was, but he mentioned it as well as not only does you take all those things you just said, and now you generate a tutorial session.
Yes,
And back when we could
specifically.
afford to put aides in every classroom, hey, if you want to give them money to put an aide in every classroom, then you don't really need maybe you don't need the AI. But at the end of the day, this aide can sit there and work with the student about a particular topic they're missing something on.
I think it's going to
And
be
teachers, when they have
tremendous.
25 kids in a classroom, they can't afford that one-on-one tutoring. They just don't have
No,
the time.
no, you cannot. And then we could talk about the Two Sigma, about how the one-on-one tutoring really does help. So
That's that Bloom guy that you.
yes, Bloom's taxonomy. Yes, the Bloom guy. Anyway, let's talk for just a couple of minutes. We only have a few minutes left. Um, about some of the things that we're going to be doing personally. AI education professionals, AI Ed Pro, AIEdPro.com. We are doing the TCEA conference. It's an online conference about for librarians specifically, only 40 minutes to talk, which that's really difficult for us. So I'm going to narrow it down to 5 things that you can use if you're a librarian. We're also going to be doing the AI and Education Conference, which is an online conference again for TCEA. We're headed to San Francisco the first week of July. It was started out as a vacation, but I was like, hey, while we're out there,
Might as
so
well
might as
talk
well go
about
talk
AI.
about artificial intelligence.
Absolutely.
So we're headed to Mendocino, California, and we're going to be talking with the school there first week of July. And we've also been asked to be keynote again at the Cast 25, which is going to be in San Antonio this year.
A little
It's
closer.
not until October, November
It
timeframe.
was. I
So
think it was October last year.
yeah,
I went to Houston last year.
yeah, and we're going to be doing some one-on-one trainings with several different school districts as school kind of starts back. Thank goodness you have a lot of state days, and I do too,
That's
because
right.
we're going to have to take some of those state days, which is a good problem to have when you have a side gig,
That's right.
is that you're busy. So anyway, we are almost out of time. I'm so happy that you guys are listening in as I sit down with Jim, or as Amy likes to call him, Jim AI, and talk about artificial intelligence because it is going to be life changing. I promise. So we hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of the week.